Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. And yes, we are here with another Splatterthon exclusive review, but also co-partnered, kind of cohorted with a little co-mingling with the Toronto After Dark Film Festival. Yes, big thanks to our buddy Alex King over at Beyond the Void podcast. He was able to get us the hookup on that and get us in there. It's been a fun weekend. We've got a lot of cool stuff on the horizon, a lot of cool things that we missed at Fantastic Fest. That we didn't get to see there that we get to see here, and of course some things that we didn't even have the option to see are new. So lots of exciting stuff, but this is the first of just a few videos we're going to put out associated with that. But yes, this was one I know we were trying to see at Fantastic Fest. They unfortunately didn't have screeners available at that festival. I did try my best to reach out and grab one. But I think that the communication was limited. This is a foreign film, and it's French, so I just don't know how all that works as far as like losing in translation. I did use Google Translate, like a loser, and I translated an email in French and sent it over. Got nothing, but that's okay. We're here now. And yeah, I was excited for this. I didn't know anything about it until I think there was a story on the Sunday Scaries, or we contemplated a story on the Sunday Scaries for this many months ago, where we talked about just it was a Lovecraftian kind of mineshaft movie, and it was just one that again faded back into obscurity for us. So many fucking horror movies out all the time, so we just didn't really think about it until I saw it on the list and was reading the description. I'm like, oh yeah, that movie. And I am just happy that we at least got to see it. Luke, how did you feel leading into the Deep Dark?
Well, anytime you mention Lovecraftian, I get excited just because H.P. Lovecraft, I'm a fan of his work. And a lot of the translations from the short stories to film tend to be pretty decent for the most part, especially Reanimator from Beyond or No Secret here on Splattercast are two of our favorites. So you're always kind of looking into that next kind of not necessarily H.P. Lovecraft, but in that realm of something that is gonna kind of when you have that appetite, you're like, let's get into that cosmic horror. So you get really excited, and then kind of this taking place in as the concept being miners in a mine shaft, it gets really interesting because it kind of gives you room to play in what that is going to actually look like and how it's going to be executed. So when we had talked about this for Fantastic Fest, and we only had that little paragraph blurb of what it is. It sounded really interesting. So as soon as we were able to kind of circle back and get this one, I was excited for it because it is a French film, and kind of seeing that take is we've talked about sometimes foreign films tend to take a different avenue than a lot of Americanized things, and kind of a little slower pace and some more character work, and kind of really deep diving into some elements that are not really touched upon for a lot of American audiences. So this one overall, I was excited for it.
Yeah, no, and getting to sit down and watch this one, I gotta say, starting things off, I enjoyed this. I thought that this had a lot of good elements to it. There were a lot of big comparisons to The Descent coming out of Fantastic Fest, and I do feel that is, just speaking with you afterwards, an unfair comparison. I think that Descent has been able to capture fear when it comes down into dealing with something in a mine shaft or just like in caves and things like that. That no film that I can say has really been able to recapture that magic. I think that they just hit it. They were able to strike a chord. They just knew exactly how to get people to that point of just saying, "Holy shit, this is fucking terrifying." And I might have unfairly went into this film looking for that. I think that the hype had been built up enough for me that it could reach that. It doesn't really get there as far as that fear element. Now, that could be for other people. It might. For me, I just feel like we spend a lot of time building up our characters, which again is good. But I think that by the time we get to the threat in this movie, and by the time we get to everything, we're an hour into the movie, and it is one of those things where it's kind of like it's only an hour and 40 minutes, so the last 40 minutes really feel like they have to kind of jam pack all of the, whatever it is we're dealing with, this creature within these caves, within this tomb. We have to really jam all that into 40 minutes. And I just think that there could have been a little bit of an easier pace throughout this. I think you could have spread things out a little bit better.
Yeah, and that was kind of my first issue with it. Kind of an awkward pace in a sense, where as we get into it, we're understanding this is a period piece, so this is in 1956. So I think at that idea there, you start kind of being intrigued about what kind of social issues they're going to tackle, and there are some here in terms of. Where our main characters from, and kind of the camaraderie between all these mining groups. And I think the setup is pretty decent, especially when we get into the mine initially. I was pretty happy with it, but then I think as we get farther into it, we kind of lose our way. Where I think you're either going to go in for a fast pace. We're going to get right to our monster effect and kind of that threat as we're in the mine, or we're going to do a lot of character work and kind of give these characters deeper roots so we can kind of differentiate who's who. Unfortunately, I don't think when we're down there, as you said, we finally get to our threat about an hour in, that we use our time diligently, because yes, of course, this is called the deep dark. It's going to be dark. We're in a mining shaft. So we're dealing with a lot of low light, but they didn't give me that sense of tension, I think, that I was looking for, where anytime there's conversation, like, again, we're going to compare it to The Descent, just because a lot of people had compared it to it initially, so that's what maybe we went into expecting. I think it was just conceptually more so rather than the character work, because I didn't get that sense of tension while I was down there. It was like, okay, we're in a mine, but I didn't feel that looming threat that was going on. I think maybe we should have introduced that threat a little quicker, or we should have used, deeper roots into our characters and have those character moments, because, overall, I think we started off a little quick, and then it lost its way without really building that tension to get us to that hour mark and kind of getting our threat out there.
Yeah, not to say that this film doesn't build tension. There are some sequences in this that I think are really well done. I think when you go into a film like this and you get the concept, you're kind of hopefully expecting that almost persistent kind of tension always there. But to me, I think that there are just moments where the threat just doesn't feel like it's very genuine, or that it's very much like
In your
as big of a
face.
risk in certain moments. Like, when you're dealing with darkness like this, we talked about it with The Origin, which I thought did a really good job of making you feel like when they're in complete darkness around them, that anything could come out at any time and grab you. This didn't feel like that. This very much for kind of the cave system and the tomb being very like much a labyrinth of a sense, not a spoiler, but like a palindrome, as they say. You kind of you're kind of expecting a little bit more, I guess, tension from that. Like the creature should be able to be like almost you shouldn't know where it's at, but it's almost like in this movie I had a sense of like, well, it's got to be pretty far away from them at this point. And so the safety just kept feeling like it was there, or at least a temporary safety. But yes, I want to get into some more positives. I think that those are my big criticisms, at least going into it there. I do think that the creature effects here are pretty good. I think that the design in and of itself is extremely unique. I definitely I was a little put off by it at first, because I was just trying to really get a gauge of what exactly was going on with it. But I think when you actually see it and you step back, I think it looks pretty good. And I just think that the concept they use and how it works and how all its little joints and everything move are pretty cool and pretty unique.
Yeah, I think when our creature pops up on screen for the first time, it is a little It was presented a little jarring for me, because I didn't get a great look at it. And I was like, this is gonna go either way. And then as soon it's more of a try it on, see how it fits kind of technique, where we only see it for a brief moment, and then as you see it more and more, I think you become a little more comfortable with it. And then
Yeah.
as soon as we kind of get, as we're exposing it a little more, I guess, I think I like it even more. There's a scene closer to the end, which there's an epic practical effect here that really looked great. And the way they use it, and just that kind of scenery, the imagery that they use there, I think looked perfect. And that's where I was really sold on the creature. That was kind of my tipping point. Like, okay, this is something I'm really on board with, and kind of using that space again. Not really getting into any spoilers, but this creature's absolutely massive, and I like that kind of comparison of being in this kind of small confined mine shaft. I think as soon as we get, for me, as soon as we get the creature effect and we get that creature there, I think the tension does build up a little bit better when it's on screen, just because we're getting that comparison of this really confined space with this hulking creature. But like you said, yeah, I think sometimes when the creature does, it is gone from the element, it kind of does lose that tension. But when the creature is there, yeah, I find that the most tense scenes, which obviously they should be. But I think the design for the creature, again, nothing really like it that I can pick out in my brain that I've seen. So I really like that they went with that unique perspective, because there are some things where we saw what was it? It Lives Inside, and there's some things where we kind of fall into that typical equation that we do see in monsters. But this one, I think it's unique of its own.
Absolutely, and that special effects sequence that you mentioned towards the end, it is the highlight of this film, in my opinion. I think that it's worth the price of admission just to get to that point, because it's so well done and it's so surprising and jarring that it's really gonna leave you sitting there going, "Holy shit, that was cool." I enjoyed that a lot. Um,
And the method that they use afterward, like that they're using, I don't want to get into it, but like that they're using for communication, is just, again, I thought was great.
Absolutely, and yeah, it's they do a great job with this creature. I think that again, it's unique, it's interesting, and when it is on screen, it does feel like a threat. I think the opening of this film, the first like 10-15 minutes, or I guess probably 10 minutes, is really strong. I think that it starts off really strong. Like you said, this takes place in what, 1956,
Yes.
and then you jump back even like longer ago in like the 1800s somewhere, and it starts off there, and just seeing the comparison of like how they used to mine and how they did things, and when they inevitably stumble into what's going on here, that was intense. That was great. I loved how what they showed of the creature at that point, because again, it's just a little tease, and I thought that all of that worked for me really well. I almost wish that the movie had stayed at that time period, because they even talk about it in our current timeline, where they're like, oh well, they didn't have this, they didn't have this, you know what I mean, like, and it's just like, ooh, wow, like they were in such a fucking predicament, like, you don't really consider the dangers, that, because it's already dangerous enough for our characters, but like to have even less equipment than what these guys had, it's like, ooh, that's intense. That is something to think about. And I thought that that was really strong. I think overall, I enjoyed the film a lot. I think that I would definitely pick this up on Blu-ray. It was something that I would revisit. Um, but I gotta be honest when I say that there was definitely a lack of tension in some points. I think that it does take a while to get going. You can really lose people in those moments, and I think that they do a fine job servicing some of the characters. I think some of the characters get more attention than others, so it does create kind of an awkward balance as far as just trying to build up a group with some camaraderie and everything. But again, I do think there's some strong elements in here as far as just like how they present certain scares, how they present certain, creature moments. There's one involving a camera, I should say, with a flash. Really cool, really well done. Really enjoyed that, and especially with again such a unique, creature. Because it's like, again, I can't really compare it to anything. I haven't really seen anything that looks too similar to it. So when you get to that sequence and you're just trying to really figure out what you're looking at, it can definitely leave you pretty gobsmacked in that perspective. But I think for the most part, this is worth watching. But I just I don't know if this is going to be again for everybody.
Yeah, I think it falls in kind of an awkward spot because, for me looking at it, I think the pacing starts off pretty strong, but then as soon as we get into that mine, We kind of lose our way for a little bit until we kind of get our threat, but that's about an hour in. So, and then it starts to pick up a little bit, but overall, like you, I would have loved a little more tension going on throughout this, or a little more character work to kind of differentiate each different character that's in this mining group. Or even there are the social issues, but I think you could have deep even or dove even deeper into those issues as well. So I think there was a lot of potential here. Overall, I think you kind of either go one way or another with some deep character work and we wait on that monster, or we just dive right into that threat and kind of really get into this kind of creature feature as it could be built. But, I think they kind of found themselves in an awkward spot. Do I think this is worth a watch? Absolutely. I think there's a lot here. Establishing that lore, I love that they do start off, in the late 1800s, I think, before we jump into that 1956 time period. Really establishing that lore of that monster. It's something that I would love to see on screen again. Just for the design alone and kind of some of that lore they established at the later half of the film. So overall, I think the Deep Dark was an effective watch. I think would I own this on Blu-ray? I don't know about that. I would love to understand more of the making of this thing. I think, just that concept alone was so intriguing. And, if you don't have a big budgeted film, I think concept here really lends its ear to effectively doing something like this. Overall, I was happy with this viewing. So this for me is going to fall into that recommend space.
Yeah, I'm definitely giving this a recommend, especially if you're a creature feature fan, if you're, a Lovecraft fan in any sense. There's definitely a lot of those elements that are brought into it. Um, you know, I just think that overall, it does have some balancing issues, but I think it does present a well crafted, interesting film. And I say I would own it on Blu-ray. I think that this is something that I would revisit, especially because I'm just curious to know how I would feel about it on a second viewing. And again, I think that it's just one of those films that I do see myself going back, especially for how they present the lore and how they really build it up, and how much time it must have taken them to kind of really get into these sets and really build into. That's something we didn't touch on, is like the sets are all practical and they look great. Like the mine shaft looks really good, and they get into some more elaborate set pieces, and everything looks convincing. There's not a single moment in here where I don't believe that they're in some dark cavernous tomb, and it's pretty awesome. I got to give them credit on that.
Yeah, I think that was well done. One of the other, I guess, issues that I had, not really necessarily an issue, I would have loved to see them use the space a little bit more. There is a particular time where they go into the tomb and they light everything up, and I thought that looked beautiful. I really wish they would have taken a little more advantage of that stuff, and just kind of with the lighting. But, overall, I think it was well done. You really do feel like you're in that mine shaft. And I said it is a little low light, hard to see sometimes, but I think with using the mining helmets with the little light was really effective as well. Kind of just only being able to shine on one character and not knowing really what's behind him kind of always gives you that eerie aspect as well. But yeah, overall, pretty well done film.
Absolutely. But alrighty, guys, it's going to wrap us up here for the Deep Dark. Let us know if you got a chance to check this one out. I don't know when it's slated to release to the public, but hopefully it's not too long that you guys have to wait to see this one. I'm very curious to see where this one's going to fall with everybody who's gotten to see it now. I think that overall, it's still a pretty effective creature feature. So if you're a creature feature fan, definitely worth checking out, especially if you want to see something kind of a little bit more unique on the monster side. And other than that, we are going to keep covering things here at the Toronto After Dark Film Festival. Got a couple more films that we've seen, a couple more that we still have to watch. But yeah, you're going to get a few more of these reviews through the next week here, but keep up with us on our social media. You can definitely see some of those posts and things like that. And I'm excited. I think there's a couple more interesting things around the horizon here. And of course, we're still rocking deep into Splatterthon here. Luke has got a nice big project he's been working on. Should be coming out later this upcoming week. And other than that, we got a lot of great stuff. So as always, thanks for watching, and keep it right here with us. And until next time, I am Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.